Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to be planting Oxalis deppei, the Iron Cross Oxalis. Oxalis deppei is a bulbous plant that we plant in the spring for summer flowering, but is actually primarily grown for its foliage. It has very attractive foliage, much like a large clover or a large shamrock. Large leaves, a mid-green with a nice cross shape in the middle, which is a purpley brown colour. And then it flowers quite soon after it produces its leaves, and it has rather attractive salmon pink flowers. The plants can be grown in full sun, although they do actually prefer light shade. In light shade, you will find that the plants will grow slightly larger. You'll get a slightly longer leaf. They grow to a maximum of about 6 inches, approximately 15 centimeters in height, with the flowering stems being a little taller than that. The bulbs are normally available for sale in shops and garden centres from November through to late June. Usually at the end of the season in June. They quite often can be bought at quite a discount. They can be planted as late as June, but ideally May and early June are the best times to plant. Oxalis deppei could be grown indoors as an indoor plant. You could grow it in a pot on a windowsill. All they would require is any well-lit windowsill, and they will grow indoors quite happily. I personally prefer to grow mine outside. I like it as a patio plant. Whether you are planting directly into the garden or whether or not you're planting, as I am, into containers or pots, Oxalis deppei is a very easy plant to grow. It grows very quickly and it's not demanding in its requirements. It grows best in a moist soil. It doesn't really like dry conditions, so keep it well watered in the summer, whether that's in pots and containers or in the garden. If it is in pots and containers, you are going to need to water regularly, which could mean watering every day in the summer. But otherwise, it's a very undemanding plant, very reliable, quick growing, and actually the bulbs are pretty cheap to buy as well. It's an inexpensive plant, and I think it's certainly well worth growing. I'm using a terracotta clay pot to pot in today, and this is a soil-based general purpose compost. Now I'm going to aim to plant at a depth of about 6-7 centimeters with a spacing of about approximately 4 to 5 centimeters between each bulb. Here we are. So 6 bulbs, and then we cover over, remembering not to fill all the way to the top to allow some space for when we water. Give the pot a tap, and our label. And now I'll water the pot and put it in a well-lit, sheltered spot, and we'll keep observing it for the shoots emerging, and in dry weather I will be watering to keep this compost slightly moist at all times. Don't let the compost dry out. And after 2 weeks, the bulbs are shooting nicely, leaves are starting to develop, and well on the way to producing a nice pot of oxalis. These young growths are really attractive to slugs and snails, so just watch out for slugs and snails at this vulnerable stage. If slugs and snails do eat the leaves, then the damage can be seen when the leaves reach maturity. And after 4 weeks from planting, here we now have a nice full pot of Oxalis. And also the first bloom, with some more flowers to come. I'll keep this plant moist, give a little fertilizer, probably fertilize every 2 to 3 weeks in the summer, which will maintain fresh growth so that the clump becomes even more full than it is now. It'll continue to produce leaves, may possibly get a second flush of flowers, but I'm not worried about that since this plant is primarily a foliage plant. I'm just happy with the foliage. As you can see, it is a good size and attractive foliage. For me, the flowers are just a bonus. So I will now just keep this plant in its pot for the rest of the summer. I can then place this with other potted plants to make attractive arrangements here on the terrace. And the plant should stay looking attractive for the rest of the summer months. Then when the cold weather comes in the autumn, the first of the freezing weather will kill the foliage and it will die back to the bulbs, and then I will bring the pot indoors and I won't water it, just keep it dry and frost free so that the bulbs will be completely dormant over winter. And then in the late spring, early summer, I will take the bulbs out of the pot, dust off the old compost, and I will then plant them in fresh compost, and the whole process can repeat. If you've planted your bulbs directly into the garden, then you can lift them in the autumn when they have died down, when the foliage has died down. You can dig the bulbs up and store them. You need to store them dry, don't give them any water. So you can put them into some general purpose potting compost or some sawdust which has been kept completely dry. Place them in that, and then you can put them into a brown paper bag or a container and leave them over winter for replanting in the spring. Or alternatively, if you want to, you can try leaving them in the ground. If you're in an area where the winters are not particularly cold, then they should overwinter quite happily in the ground. They'll sprout again in the spring when the temperatures rise. Or if you live in an area where there are very hard winters, you could give the bulbs a mulch. So you put a little extra mulch on top of the bulbs to give them a little more protection in winter. And with a bit of luck, they'll come through the winter nicely and they'll sprout again for you in the spring.